About 10% of Vermont families are living in poverty. For a single parent with 2 kids, that means they're making about $18,000 a year. Edna Fairbanks-Williams knows what it's like to live in poverty.
My first husband left me with 5 kids. I wouldn't call it for me stressful because I was a very strong-minded person.
She turned things around, and now her mission is to help the poor.
Look around you and see what you can do to help. Poor people in Vermont are treated, well, like second-class citizens, I guess. They're told what they've got to do and what they can't do, what they're supposed to do, and people expect them to do it.
Edna became a low-income advocate because she was low-income herself, raising a family on her own, and finding herself on food stamp benefits, and experiencing herself how difficult that is. And she really appreciated the help that she got and saw how important it was to be able to get that kind of help from other people and get it in a dignified way.
I don't approve of men thinking that they're stronger and thinking that they can control by violence. That's what my first husband did.
Are you a feminist?
I don't think I'm a feminist. I don't think that everything should be given to anybody just because of whether they're male or female. My daughter and I work on cars. We carpenter. I've worked as flagging on the road. I've done all kinds of things that men do.
Edna was a feminist in the way that Vermont women who grew up in the country are feminists, being out in the mountains or the hills and learning how to keep the stove full and your house warm, knowing how to fix a car or a tractor if it broke down. She did all those things.
I was elected to go to Montpelier from the Head Start where I was working. I was the bus driver. They sent me out into all the dirt back roads and so on because I was willing to drive them, and I didn't have a nice low sports car like some of the rest of the people did. So I went out and picked up all the kids out in the farmland. At that time, they were starting the legal services. They asked me if I'd be interested in doing legal services because I handled a lot of problems with the Head Start parents and things. I would take them to the doctors, I would take them to court and try to smooth out their family problems as they arose. And so that's how come I got started in legal services.
First of all, Edna was the most important person on my board. She was on my board for 15 years. Edna was frequently the only person there who wasn't a lawyer. She would listen very carefully to everything, and everything would get written down, and she took careful notes. She would come up to me with something that was in her notes that I had done or said 6 months ago or a year ago, and ask about that and how that compared with what I was doing now or what I had done to follow up on something. She was comfortable asking difficult questions.
So how much did you spend on that?
About 160 each.
For how many?
No, 8.
The first I heard about it here in Vermont was when the FBI called me doing a background check on the president of my board, Edna Fairbanks-Williams. And I thought it was a great opportunity to have the rural community in the country represented on the Legal Services Board, which tended to be dominated by lawyers from big firms in large cities.
I spent 9.5 years in Washington in legal services. What I think was the most fun was when I was at the White House and President Clinton was pushing me around in my wheelchair. I normally didn't have a wheelchair, but I had very badly sprained my ankle, and it was as big as my head, and I couldn't walk the long halls. So we got the wheelchair, and President Clinton was pushing me around. And then when we left, the bus was parked down the street a ways, so we stole the wheelchair and got me down to the bus, and then took the wheelchair back, but it wasn't supposed to leave the White House.
Edna was I think, a colorful member of the board. She attended every meeting. I don't think she missed any of them, even when she was undergoing cancer treatment. She would still go on her trips to the Federal Legal Services Corporation meetings. She participated. I did hear over the years a number of board members who would talk to me at national meetings, and they would describe something that I knew all too well, which was they thought Edna was sleeping. They'd see her what appeared to be nodding off during a meeting, and her eyes would be closed and she'd be sitting back a little bit, and they'd go on with their meeting, and then all of a sudden Edna would open up her eyes and jump into the conversation, and she'd be following every word that had been said, and she was often holding somebody accountable for an inconsistent position or something that they'd said that didn't ring true to her, and she wanted to make sure that they were thinking about the clients.
You go in and they say, make out these papers. So you make out the papers. You go in the next time, they say, well, you had to have your birth certificates for the kids. Well, you go in the second time, well, you should have brought your fuel bill and your light bill. Each time that you go in, ask the welfare worker if there's anything else you need, and then have it all with you when you go.
On face value, people could dismiss her as, an older woman in a wheelchair from central Vermont, low-income person, when in reality she was really sharp. She was listening to what people were saying. She was taking notes. And I think that she stunned people often in public because there she was in her wheelchair being Edna and asking a really good pointed question or bringing out like something that everybody forgot.
Edna was a very effective advocate for the things that she believed in. She had tremendous patience, and she would often wait people out. And she was fearless in terms of sitting at a table and waiting until people were really paying attention to her. And then she'd go back in her notes and she'd pull out some fact or thing that she thought was important, and she'd lay it out for folks. But she had tremendous patience.
Just recently, I started working with a food distribution center and was able to get that incorporated and get a 501c3. Last year, we gave away over 3,000 pounds, way over a ton. Now, you want me to look at this or look at you? I'm looking in here. Okay.
Well, the most important thing Edna did for me was to keep me honest. She made sure that I stayed true to the values that I had when I came into this job. I think Edna was driven by both her compassion for people and a sort of deep-seated sense of justice, what was fair. And between those two things, she managed to get a lot done.
What Edna can teach us, I think, is to be ourselves and to be grounded and real and pay attention and don't give up.
Spending time with Edna meant that you had to understand that education, privilege, economic security didn't mean that you brought anything more to the table than she did. She always was ready to listen to everyone, rich or poor, and try to figure out what was going on with them and try to help them.